All right, so for our friends who are watching from home, 1,000 pardons. I was looking at the Friday schedule and I thought I was out of time. I'm not. So you're going to get two videos, one 8 minutes long and this one that's 7 minutes long. My apology. So we stopped on page 17, and the last blank that I gave you was 2232. Adam and Eve were trying to establish their independence. I said this is the very nature of sin. And as a result of Adam and Eve trying to establish their independence, we end up with, here's your blank, broken relationships. So what we talked about in the pattern of the kingdom was how the reason life was perfect in the garden was not because the weather was great and the food was good, although it was. The reason life was perfect in the garden was because the relationships were perfect between man and God, man and woman, and man and his environment. And all of those, as a result of sin, are now broken. So what about the relationship between men and women? Well, the trust and the intimacy are now gone. Remember in Genesis 2:25, it says they were naked and they were not ashamed. How about Genesis 3:7? The eyes of both were open and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths. So now Adam and Eve don't want to be in each other's presence naked because they are ashamed, they are guilty, they are afraid. So the trust and intimacy are now gone. Here's your blank, they blame one another, or more properly speaking, Adam blames Eve and Eve blames the serpent. Genesis 3, the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me. Now, Adam really gives us a great example of what it means to pass the blame because he manages to blame two people in one sentence. The woman you gave to me. He's blaming the woman and God at the same time. She gave me fruit of the tree and I ate. Then God said to the woman, what is this that you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me and I ate. But no one said, my bad, I did this. So they blame one another. There is now, here's your blank, conflict. There is now conflict in the home. Genesis 3:16, to the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. Now, there's a lot we could say about that phrase, but two things we can draw from it. First, now, because of sin, instead of submitting to the man, the woman desires to, here's your blank, control him. And instead of lovingly leading the woman, the man will now, here's your blank, abuse his authority. So the home was meant to be this beautiful picture between the relationship between God and his people. And now it is going to be a place of conflict and pain and frustration. So relationship between man and woman shattered. What about the relationship between humans and creation? Well, God then turns to Adam and he says this. And to Adam he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. So working the land will now involve pain and, here's your blank, frustration. Pain and frustration. The natural world is now our, here's your blank, enemy, as well as our friend. So perhaps in addition to seeing the tragedy coming in Afghanistan, perhaps some of you saw the tragedy happening in Haiti. A 7.2 magnitude earthquake hit Haiti. There's already over 1,000 people dead, and it will likely be many thousands more. And not only that, but there is no government in Haiti. There is no military to speak of. There's no police to speak of. So people are trying to dig their own neighbors out from underneath rubble. And to even make it worse, there is a hurricane approaching Haiti. So pray for Haiti. But to some extent, all of that is happening in Haiti because of Genesis 3. Earthquakes, tornadoes, strife, and conflict, all because of Genesis 3. Now, important to note, work itself is not a result of the fall. Adam and Eve were given a job to do before sin came into the world. Work is not a result of the fall. Here's your blank. Frustration at our work is a result of the fall. Hating the work you do, find the work you do to be pointless or meaningless, that is a result of the fall. Because guys, we will work in heaven. You will have a job to do in heaven and it will be the perfect job for you and you will delight in that job, but you will be working. I will be working in the new heavens and the new earth. We were made to work. Eden, you had a question?
Yes. So if you think that that Adam and Eve would have just like come up and said, "Yeah, I did it," do you think things would have been different?
Things would have likely been different for them,
But maybe not like.
but not like on the macro sense. Like sin and death are still in the world. Christ is still going to have to come, but it would have made all the difference for them if they would have owned up and said, "Hey, I'm going to take responsibility for this."
Mm-hmm.
George?
Do you think we would have money if Adam and Eve didn't sin?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, because we are meant to build cultures and societies and civilizations. And so I think some kind of unit of exchange would have likely occurred, but who's to say? I'm not very good and don't really spend a lot of time answering what would have happened questions. I can sometimes kind of take a stab at what will happen in the future, but I can't really go back and say, man, if this one event had been different, what would have happened? I don't really know. The Bible doesn't tell me, so I don't really want to talk about that. All right, very quickly, we've seen the relationship between man and earth. How about the relationship between human beings and God? Well, the punishment fits the crime. Humans turn from God in, here's your blank, rebellion. So humans turn from God in rebellion, and so God turns away from them in, here's your blank, judgment. So God and man are now separated, and since God is the source of life, Adam and Eve perish, here's your blank, spiritually that day. So the moment Adam and Eve took a bite from that fruit, spiritually, they're dead. And they will perish, here's your blank, physically in the future. So there is a spiritual death that occurs on that day, just like God said, and there is a physical death that will occur in the future. But still, even at this moment of sin, the juice from the fruit is still on their chin, and there's grace. Where do we see grace? 3 places. First, God comes looking for them. God seeks them out in their sin. Second, God makes a special promise to them. Genesis 3:15, I will put enmity, he's talking to Satan, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head and you shall bruise his heel. So again, right at that moment of utter rebellion, God makes a promise to reverse what Adam and Eve had done. And third, God covers their, here's your blank, nakedness. Genesis 3:21, the Lord God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skins and clothed them. And guys, I'm not a farmer, neither is Georgia Valentine, but even we know that there's no such thing as a skin tree. If you want skins, you got to kill an animal. So Adam and Eve sin, and God kills an innocent animal to cover their shame. I wonder if that'll come up again later in the Bible. Okay, now what page are we on?
20.
20. All right, page 20. Georgia?
I just have